We all know Pokemon are eating each other, but who is eating what? That's where it starts to get a bit interesting, because the Lanturns are eating the Starmie, the Dhelmise are eating the Wailords, the Wailords are eating 10,000 Wishiwashi a day, the Grapplocts are eating the Golisopods, and vice versa. The Rayquaza is having an ozone bowl of cereal out of Miniors. It's a wild world living by the Pokemon food chain. So I'm going into every canonical Pokemon that eats another Pokemon, and one of the wild cards here for me would have to be the Arboks. Eating the Woopers. Kind of demon do you have to be for a Wooper to be your prime fine dining selection? You little sweet tooth guilty pleasure. Talk about Slimming World. They label bad foods as sins. Eating a Wooper is worth enough sins to transport you straight to hell in the back of a Rolls Royce. Why's Arbok gotta go for... I can't eat... What's wrong with puffins? Do you really have to eat at the dinner table in such a demonic, sacrificial manner? Arbok could sustain itself eating so many other things. Almost anything smaller than it. It already eats pigeon Spearow eggs. Yeah, what was wrong with that? Well, were the eggs not hitting the macros for your Arbok? You're bulking up, brother. I mean, who's eating eggs and then going, yeah, yes, it's okay. It's, you know what I could really go for right now? Nice bitter Axolotl. Arbok can eat anything at once, but he wants Wooper. The only time anyone should be asking for our Wooper as a meal is Ric Flair in a Burger King drive-thru. Targeting Wooper specifically, that's gotta be purely for sport, for love of the game. You know, I always felt bad for that manga Arbok. You know, the one you see get slashed in half by a Charmeleon. Those days are gone. Your sympathy is drained. This is warranted for the whole lot of you Arbok. It's really interesting to me how Rayquaza is like this omnipotent sky deity, yet somehow been documented enough to be a known predator to Miniors. How unlucky would you have to be as a Minior? Especially for the most of them, you'd assume they'd all be floating around the Lola, which is a 7-hour flight across the planet from Japan-based Hoenn, floating about as a Minior in a Lola. You start hearing Rayquaza, you hear us cry in the distance, you're just like, oh my, what are the chances? What's he even doing here? Go home. You got a 5-floor tower. Go home. I refuse to believe Sharpedo exclusively dines on Wailmer, but that's all the Pokedex has given us for now. Sharpedo is too evil of a creation to not be eating everything that has gills. But interestingly enough, you see a bit more of him in action in the new Pokemon Snap. He's going for Lanturns, Finions, Leminions, even the Squirtle. Oh, that's a risky game to be playing, messing about with the young of the big man himself. Does Sharpedo not realize what game he's in? Oi, there's cameras about, you know that. That is more than enough video evidence to get a knock on your door from 3 large tortoise cannons withdrawn. Nah, don't worry about that. Nah, they brought the 9mm this time. Behem? Don't know, is that how you say it? The only reference I have is that, who's that Pokemon where they made him sound like Mr. Bean or something. Well, they got him and Dubwool having this predatory prey combo. They went out of their way to make this canonically confirmed. And I think that alone makes it one of the best ones, at least one of the most interesting ones. Because once a Pokemon's existed long enough to have loads of different Pokedex entries, when everything surface level about a Pokemon is already well documented, you may as well get a bit freaky with the extra lore additions as each game comes out. Slowly, each generation, we just know more and more about each Pokemon. Behem, he's an alien, pretty much. Yeah, sure he does the sheep probing and all that. Of course he does, why not? By generation 15, we're gonna find out he was behind the Roswell incident. Generation 30, yeah, sure. He lives in a big loft with Stan Smith, why not? When it comes to Clampo, realistically, the main known predator here would be Marini, also seen prowling in Pokemon Snap. But even if it weren't for the cameras, you could easily assume it's necking down Clampos on the daily. He's already filled up on a nice protein-rich diet of Corsola and Pincurchin. And this is another one, just another evil one. What kind of evil entity do you have to be to eat live Corsolas? The Toxapex, they're doing that as well. Yeah, no wonder Bruxish eat your young. Yeah, that's another one. Of course, Bruxish is here in this video. If your gut instinct doesn't tell you within 1 second that that is a predator, then you should stay very offline. I always knew going into this Bruxish would be here for this topic in some form. I just thought he'd be eating Magnemites. But no, the Bruxish are eating the Marini, which I was gonna feel bad about until I was reminded what they're doing to the Corsola. I mean, Pincurchin, hey, do what you want. You do what you want. Have them with a glass of red wine and some candlelight for all I care. Have yourself a red panty night meal. Do what you want, just leave the Corsola off the dinner table. Leminion, of all things, also gets in on the action preying on Clampo, occasionally digging one up off the seafloor, which out of all of the predator-prey dynamics Leminion is involved in, it's one of the more on-brand ones, given the clout Leminion has. Because out of all things, who's preying on Staryu and Starme? Starme, especially, they have no business being as powerful as they are, getting preyed on by something like Leminion. For some reason, Lanturn isn't listed here as a predator to Starme, even though it absolutely is. Being in competition with Leminion for food. Lanturn, I can kind of understand. You know, they've got electricity on them. They could just cattle prod the Starme till it's like, yes, all right, you made your point, just eat me, do whatever. Maybe the Staryu and that, they don't mind a cheeky little nibble, since they can just regenerate from their red jewel anyway. Especially in the case of Leminion, the Starme know they're infinitely more powerful, and if they had mouths, could very easily flip the predator-prey dynamic on them. But no, I see this exchange as a much more consensual one. I reckon they see it more like a bit of a spa day, like having a fish pedicure. For the pre-evolved form for what would become what we know is an absolute predator of all kinds in Malamar. The only real documented case of them preying in a targeted way is Inkay, hypnotizing Chinchou in Pokemon Snap, a species that could hypnotize you to crawl in its mouth. At that point, it's just presumed to be a predator to the entire verse, the whole menu the Pokedex is offering. Hey, go ahead, you can ask for the secret menu and all. I'm pretty sure he's scanning a few Digimon on the side. Thankfully, I can at least say they're going for Chinchou, because it'd feel odd making this video and having to leave off something that eats Pokemon as blatantly as Malamar. You can even go on to headcanon that the pair of them have no qualms in eating Lanturns, even Leminions as well, while they're at it. The Starmies, they've got to get a bit of redemption from somewhere. Leminion eating Star, that's disrespectful. You're better than this. And speaking of the Lanturn getting what's coming to him, Frillish is also there to give him a good squeeze. We know Jellicent are going for Fisherman, so I reckon it's only fair to assume that they're not shy about eating a Lanturn or two on the side in their adult life either. But it doesn't seem to stop there. Frillish getting plenty of predatory action, grabbing Magikarp, Alum and Molars. Hey, at that point, if you're playing Pokemon Snap, he might just come grab the camera off you. And then for Magikarp, it doesn't get much easier than Frillish. Also stated to be direct prey to Pidgeotto and Pidgeot. And in Pokemon Snap again, you can see Beartick going for one. But these are just a few of the named cases, because we know they're getting bullied out there by everyone. Land, sea, air, any domain. I reckon somehow they're getting ate in the desert as well. Magikarp is prey to anyone with enough motivation. These keep the population thriving. Within the Pokemon ecosystem, it might as well be a grain of rice. Magikarp is like the Arceus equivalent to Jesus showing off his infinite fish glitch and feeding like thousands of people in that one go. Although I say that, Wishiwashi isn't too far off the infinite fish glitch either. Canonically speaking, has a much better case for it actually. More Pokedex entries specifically talk about how it's preyed on by Dugong, Wailmer, Wailord, Pelipper, even Wingull is getting in on the action. So far, the Pokemon world's equivalent to Plankton, even though Plankton already exists in their world. Now these ones, they're really getting bullied. Like a generational bloodline ceased in one gulp of a Pelipper. Now Wailmer is said to eat a ton in a day. Now if you crunch the numbers on this stupidly exaggerated Pokedex entry, Wishiwashi at a weight of 0.3 kilograms, and let's just say a metric ton of 1,000 kilos, that'd mean a single Wailmer is necking back 3,333 Wishiwashi on the daily. Okay, now never mind Magikarp. Wishiwashi are quite literally the rice of the Pokemon food chain. Going by the weights each one has, that's just over 12.5 Wishiwashi schools, which then Wailord is eating in single gulps. And then if you crunch the numbers again, at just over triple the weight of a Wailmer, Wailord, you could assume on the daily, could be scarfing down near enough 38 Wishiwashi schools. 10,000 Wishiwashi in a day if you simply tripled Wailmer's caloric intake apparently. 38 Wishiwashi schools, potentially. That's gotta cause some kind of imbalance in the underwater ecosystem there. Wailord and the chubby product of his nut. They need a great equalizer. They gotta save some Wishiwashi for the rest of the ocean, or else the whole place is gonna starve. But who could possibly make a predator out of a weapon who's eating 10,000 fish in a day? Well, in comes Dhelmise. What an absolute weapon. Dhelmise being the natural predator to Wailord. He could literally hunt once in its entire life and live off the one Wailord it manages to do in. Dhelmise, he doesn't need the calories. You take away the anchor, and it probably weighs less than a single Wishiwashi. Just a bit of haunted seaweed, and he's there hunting down a whale filled with the energy of 10,000 little fish a day. And Dhelmise, who manages to knock off a Wailord, has won the Scran lottery. That's a truly bottomless brunch set for life. Sneasel has a couple prey here. Some respectable, others demonic. Hunting down Pidgey, a fair one. You know, everyone's doing it, you might as well. Reliable source, common, plenty of protein, type advantage, ice versus flying, very little sentience, morally a great choice. Even Delibird apparently preys on Delibird. I have no real qualms for. But if you take a look at Alolan Sandshrew and your first thought is sustenance, you are a demon. You are greedy. How dare they go for a Alolan Sandshrew? How could they do that? Sneasel doesn't currently have any canonical predator according to the entries. And they better not add me to the Pokedex. I will be Sneasel's predator if he's preying on a Alolan Sandshrew. Don't worry, wee man. I'll back you. Don't worry. Sneasel even looks over and mean mugs an Alolan Sandshrew. He's getting chucked straight in my air fryer. He's getting fed to my fat dog Diesel. Weavile, they're doing the exact same thing, only they expand their palate, going for a Alolan Vulpix as well. Well, in that case, you know, Diesel, he's a fat boy, you can have the both of you. But then again, they also hunt Mamoswine, and I can't help but respect it. The hunt for Mamoswine, that's gotta be an extreme diff effort, even with a group. Like, you could just live off the Pidgeys, but nah, no, you go for the kingpin of the snow biome. You've gotta respect the hustle a bit there. I can't really tell if Scythers aim to eat tarantulas or if they just view it as prey in the same way a cat with a ball of string. I for one reckon the intent of consumption is all there, but it just never happens because the strings are immune to the scythes. He just can't quite crack the coconut open. The tarantula innards is the delicious chicken nugget. More me. That protective ball of string is the 4 a.m. on a Saturday high street McDonald's bouncer, and Scyther is the hungry crackhead who's blatantly got a couple knives on him being denied entry. Alolan Grimer and Muck, the great equalizer to garbage. Pair of sludge entities who engulf giant creatures of non-recyclables. You'd imagine that'd be the end of us all. But this is a predator we currently need on our planet. Alolan Mucks would save our planet right now. It's just not fair. Why don't we get all the bad predators, the real predators, all the ones that make it very difficult to listen to Biggie Small's entire discography now. Galarian wheezing as well. The big man himself even would be saving us a good bit. A nice negative carbon footprint on him feeding off the trubbish. Down Berserker's pub, they're like, nah, mate, you're not getting your keys. You do piss to drive. Wait, no. He's done more than enough for the environment. It's only fair he's allowed to drive a gas guzzler now and then. Alright, fair enough. Okay, yeah, you know what? You've earned these keys, brother. Drive on. Godspeed, soldier. Crabrawler, you didn't even need to make cannon to let it be known he's preying on Execute. Boxing Crab, them eggs are getting cracked into a glass and drank in one go. Not only that, he even preys on Execute inadvertently, getting his daily spoon's breakfast to line his stomach before demolishing their, you're doing dry January. Get tough. No, you're not. No, you're not. Get real. Get real. Maybe next year. We're doing 99p points, alright? Maybe next year. Grapploct and Golisopod, they have sort of like a real recognize real type of predator-prey dynamic. They cut the small talk, none of this predator-prey trad Christian household role-playing we got going on. 1v1 me, and then we'll see who's eating who. Winner gets the feast. You'd imagine more often than not, Grapplocs are eating Golisopods, but then again, Golisopods look tailor-made to be unsubmittable. How are you gonna sneak in a chokehold on a man built like Golisopod? His whole body is flat and curved around. Be like trying to apply a rear naked choke to an ironing board. But look, this one's a variable because if Grapploct, if he's had his at minimum 8 points, so anytime after 11 a.m., he will find a way to choke Golisopod to make a prey out of him and grill him in the beer garden of Berserker's pub to share a bit with the boys. Scolipede and Center Scorch, they've also got one of those Warriors Death type of rivalries like Grapploct and Golisopod. Now, I see the words are telling me this. I just don't have an easy time believing that this is an equal affair. A fire type versus a bug type. Nah, Scolipede, you're not gaslighting anyone into thinking that you're getting any good swings in there. You start Scolipede like, yeah, I heard about the thing the other day. You and Center Scorch, you had like a scrap outside the casino. Scolipede there looking like he passed out in a wok for 10 hours like, Yeah, no, just called it a draw, innit? This one's just unfair. The loser becomes the winner's meal. You might as well, considering the loser will be deep fried by the end of it. Carablast and Shelmet. I could have sworn that was one of them 50-50 dynamics, an equal counterpart. But apparently, Carablast are the ones who top here. They're betrayed as rivals. How you gonna look me dead in the face and call this a rivalry when one side devours the other? Shelmet, it's still a rivalry. It's just sometimes I might want to eat you. Well, no, don't worry about it. I probably won't eat you, but I just wanted you to know I could eat you. And I know you won't do the same to me. The favorite food of a Sandile, a nice wild Trapinch. Very intelligent move, very meta form of hunting by Sandile. Arena trap ability. Sandile can get a bit comfy, can take a couple turns to set the dinner table, take a turn to put the bib on. 10 out of 10 ability if Trapinch were the hunter. A complete biological oversight as a bit of prey. Biological soft lock, a cheat code for Sandile.
Oh yeah, you're going nowhere.
Outside of Wishiwashi, the Wingull also like to swoop in on Finions who get a bit too cocky jumping out of the water. They've got to be a bit quick to be pulling that off. No chance you're eating on any Pokemon beach undisturbed. Actually, the more you think about it, beaches in Pokemon only get more stressful, more disturbing. If I'm stepping onto any Pokemon beach, they better have hired like Thundurus as the lifeguard. Yeah, make sure he knows how to grass knot as well. Add that to his moveset as part of the job requirement so the Palisades don't get any funny ideas. But the Wingull get them funny ideas. It's ingrained into them to swoop down on prey. And sometimes it just might bite back in the form of Barraskewda. The karmic cycle is complete. It's a live by the swoop, die by the swoop world here in Pokemon. That just makes me a bit sad. The brutal reality of nature. Why is Finizen having to be preyed on? Pokedex, he could have kept that one to itself. We're better off taking the blue pill on what happens to Finizens. Not listening, not having it. They all live long enough to get to grow up into jacked, sexy fishmen, Dragalge, camouflage in seaweed, and they poison them. To Finizen, what kind of another monstrous predator-prey dynamic? At the very least, there's got to be some good to come out of this. There's got to be a sizable amount of Dragalge who just can't tell the difference and kick off with a base form Palafin, only to get battered by All Might. At the very least, Finizen isn't the bottom here. He's not the sub of the overall food chain here. It's not stated what Pokemon specifically, but it does have a feud with Barraskewda over prey. So you could assume he's going for Wingulls. Tyrantrum, back in his day, would have been a predator to all. The kingpin of the food chain. Even present day, I can't imagine another Pokemon eating one of these unless it's already been taken down. So it should come as no surprise he's eating the Amoras. Oh, I know, what a demon he is. How could he possibly eat these adorable sauropods? So it's not the same as all of these Pokemon in the present day eating essentially children like Wooper and Corsola. Tyrantrum, I'm giving him the pass here. When it comes to morality, you've got to adjust a bit for inflation. And 100 million years ago, morality wouldn't cross any creature's mind. So eating an adorable plushy animal alive back then, light work. Hey, I'll have a couple more of them if you're offering. When survival is a factor, it wouldn't even be in your mind. Cute probably only became a trait that even crossed your mind 150 years ago once they figured out cholera. And on the topic of Wingull getting what it truly deserves, unfortunately, this retribution can only be maintained in Wingull form once the mewing streak pays off. And it's a Pelipper. No one is snatching that jaw up. Even add Love Disc to their platter as well. No chance. Pelipper treating the Love Disc like they're a tub of Haribo Love Hearts. Quillfish as well, doing the exact same, confirmed to be feasting on Love Disc as well. Which really goes to show how low on the pecking order Love Disc is if it's getting domed by what was essentially Johto's Love Disc. I feel as though Basculin has many more as the young'uns and privately educated 31-year-old Olajide Olatunji would say. Ops. But in terms of officially documented ones, it only seems to be Bombardier and Big Dondozo. Those are very one-sided relationships, no chance. Dondozo probably scrans Basculin by the dozen like a very gluttonous handful of Maltesers. Glalie likes to eat anything frozen, essentially. So Vanillite, prime snack for him. But it makes you wonder, if it freezes prey to eat them, is Glalie one of the few confirmed instances of a cannibal Pokemon? One who would eat its own without question. In terms of texture, flavor, taste, cooking instructions, Vanillite is essentially just a fun-sized Glalie. Either way, you're tucking into a shaped piece of ice. I feel as though once you go below the freezing point temperature, anything you try to wedge into your mouth is just Kino at that point. By the Glalie logic, he should also be a complete fiend for Snovers, in the way Galarian Darumacas are. Or maybe not in the way Galarian Darumacas are, because it's a little different here. Look, if Snover really didn't want to get munched, they wouldn't grow berries on their belly. What kind of sick temptation is this? You're quite literally asking to be prey there. That is a call to nature, a context clue to all other living things that I am an edible being. It does seem to me like they don't get straight up consumed. Maybe there's actually a worse fate for the Snover than simply getting devoured. You'd end up propped up on a stick in a Darumaka cave, only to be harvested daily. And if you stop growing the product, you get disposed of. If anything can find something as visually unappealing as a nose pass to be edible, to be a little snack, then never give up hope. There will always be someone out there who finds you to be edible, to be a little snack. Hopefully not to the same extent a Metang does a nose pass, not enough to be actively hunting you down at speeds that would get you ticketed on most roads. Meals, they don't have to be presentable. They just have to get the job done. Purely a nutrition-based dining experience. 60 miles an hour though. Nose pass can't be that good. They've got to be unbelievably tasty. Unreal levels of garden by Metang. I wouldn't even drive 60 miles an hour if you told me nose pass existed and I could go see one for real. Existing in the Pokemon world, as a human, it sounds hellish enough. But imagine a mystery dungeon type situation where you're reincarnated into a tropical fruit. You are prey to everyone, from Apoms to Ainsley. Swallowed whole by 2 cannons, carried away with the rest of the berries Greedent has a hold of. Imagine being reincarnated into a creature so tasty that monkeys get visibly excited to see you. Apom does a little Bonsweet jig. He busts out the expensive emotes just at the sight of you. Exact same situation as being a Cherubi. But thankfully, in that context, the most you'd seemingly get beef off of is a Starly. But still, that's the only name we've got confirmed hunting Cherubi. If you're a Cherubi, we know everyone would be trying to grind you up into dust and chuck you into Dr. Pepper flavoring. And while I'm at it, aside from Cherubi, Starly has got quite the CV on him here when it comes to documented Pokemon scranning. So he's already got Wurmple, Cherubi, can throw in Wormadam to that menu as well, and he's far from camera shy. The Paldean Pokedex snapped him twice, lurking against Scatterbugs and Applin. But once its belly is very full, probably too full to fly with over 5 confirmed victims, too full to evolve even, and be strong enough to then fend away its own predator in Persian, who's there to reap the rewards, to enact karma on the greedy bird. And joining him on that Scatterbug prowl at least, you may also find Graffaye. So I guess it's just another incredibly easy bug target in the Pokemon ecosystem. Somehow, if you manage to evolve and survive the gauntlet of existing as a Bonsweet, don't think for 1 second that you're safe as a Steenie. If anything, the graft of living is only gonna get more difficult now because you've got the Corviknight family on you. Pokedex is saying, any one of them that pecks at it will be greeted with a smack and a kick. Yeah, well, those little Conor McGregor drunk tweak threats, they're not gonna stop a Corviknight, Corvus Squire even, from devouring you. Pikipek, aside from the occasional Bonsweet, because, you know, why not? You might as well. Go on, treat yourself. A nice, easy treat to be hunting for. They go for specifically Metapods, which I find to be a bit of a hustler's mentality there. You gotta work smart, not hard. Because first off, not going for Kakoonas, remaining on good terms with the Beedrill. That's a smart play. But also, I mean, yeah, you know, I could fight you as a Caterpie for like 1 second and eat you. Or I could bide my time, wait about 5 minutes for you to evolve into a Metapod, and then conveniently put the bib on now that you're looking like that backy hospital bed. An odd Pokedex entry here, so it's saying Metapod's shell doesn't even crack if Pikipek tries, but if it tips over, the insides spill out anyway. So what are you saying, no cracks and still spilling? Do you mean to tell me that Metapod has not been factory sealed this entire time? The butterfree goo has been contained in an open can this entire time. You catch a Metapod, you turn your Pokeball upside down in your pocket. Are you essentially carrying a jar of honey in one of your 6 Pokemon slots now? Well, either way, apparently Pikipek is finding a way. And once Pikipek is done drinking his apparently mimosa-built Metapod, Talonflame, and even Fletchinder, I think that's what it's called, they might just swoop down and get a 2-for-1. Classic Predator-Prey dynamic once again. Why not the larger red bird simply devour the smaller red bird? And if the Pikipeks are in hiding there, the Wingull definitely won't be. The fire-type Talonflame preying on water Pokemon. That right there. That's a power move. Imagine being a Wingull getting snatched by one of these, knowing you're one water gun away from freedom, but you're just too gripped up to pull the trigger. Corviknight, the Bunnelby. Another one, Hydrogen Bomb, Coughing Baby .jpg. If you're a Bunnelby, you've got to be living like the Germans are still flying overhead, down in the bunker for life. Just lock yourself away in Vault 101. I think I'd take my chances being eaten alive by 20 live Diglets before I'd let a Corviknight tear me to shreds. Imagine living life as prey to taxis being consumed by your Uber. But just maybe, if you're a Bunnelby looking to lurk on the ground like a moleman in hibernation from the Corviknights on the prowl for you, at the very least, take yourself to some grounds nearby Druddigon, and they'll clear out any Diglett and Dugtrio who may give you a bit of hassle. Any tunnel that you make as a Diglett or Dugtrio, very easily traceable. You don't have to exactly go Bear Grylls to figure out where a Diglett's been going about as traceable as a farm track. The Druddigons know where to find you. Imagine being a Diglett roaming about, decide to go up for a bit of fresh air, only to get a Druddigon Golden Freddy jump scare. See, Corviknight must have learned to get a lot more smart about where his meals were coming from. As a kid, apparently he was grafted in the forests looking for grubbing. That's a much more difficult attempt at getting food. In its child form, type advantage or not, similar sized creatures, that's probably like a mid-diff fight. It seems more like a feud than a predator-prey gimmick. If I were a Rookity and I didn't have like Corviknight about to back me, I'd just be going a tier below. I'd stick to just eating straight worms, classic worms, nothing wrong with that. Not even just Pokemon, you know, just actual bugs. See, Hoothoot does the same as well, apparently. That's not an easy fight for him either. In fact, that's a high diff fight for Hoothoot. That's quite a bit of effort. Would you actually want to fight the chicken every time you ate some if you have the punching power of a Hoothoot? You know what? Nah, I'm sound. I'll just stick to the cherry berries there. I'll wait till I'm at least a knockdown. Even the convergent form of Diglett isn't safe. Yeah, that's right. No white privilege for Wiglett. Like, if you evolve to the point where you could pick up your enemy's scent from 65 feet away to give you ample hiding time, then you've been prey for a long, long time to many gluttonous creatures. A seasoned veteran of the sport. And quite frankly, I can't even blame the loser. I'd be tempted to take a bite out of a Wiglett if I got my hands on one. Hey, you gotta try it. Come on, you gotta try it at least once, haven't you? Look, I know it'd be a bit of a gamble, all right? Looks alone, I feel as though it'd either taste like an iced donut or a severely undercooked canned hot dog. No in-betweens there, but you gotta take the gambit sometimes. Wurmple is near enough like a land Magikarp when it comes to an easy meal. In fact, all the insects probably are, but Wurmple seems to get bullied the most. That we know of. They're getting devoured by Talos, Swellow, obviously, but Starly gets in there a bit as well again. But you don't even have to state it. Like, you can put the Pokedex away. Your Pokedex is no good here. Put it away. Every bird and many more creatures are eating Wurmple if locked in a room with one. You go down that Slateport City street market in Hoenn, within seconds, you could probably be eaten a Wurmple off a stick. If Magikarp and Wishiwashi are like the rice of fish, then Wurmple, it's not far off the Jesus Infinite bread glitch. To be fair, you can say this of all the little bugs. Sableye being a little fiend for Gemeralds, canonically a fiend. You know he's always clocking in for long hard shifts in the mines for a tasty little Carbink. This one's obvious. But what I didn't know was Sableye having a little feud with Gabbites, who typically end up getting to the Carbink first. Not to eat though. Gabbite's not a predator in this sense. They just like shiny objects. He pretty much sees Carbink as a Funko Pop, but still Sableye committing to being a predator, knowing they're in competition with Gabbites. Sight. Do you know who he evolved into? Are you mad? It's not worth it, brother. I'll just stick to the groceries and that. We all know just how badly Omanyte and Star were getting treated back in the old prehistoric days. To no one's wonder, these two went extinct with all the other fossil Pokemon feasting on them. Caracosta and Archeops being examples of this, the pair of them slurping a bit of Omanyte. A fancy prehistoric escargot dish for them. But Caracosta takes it to another level. He is a greedy boy. The Omanyte isn't enough to satiate. He's gotta go. Right. Where's your dad? He better be tasty. I just chews straight through the entire thing, just completely destroying the one purpose of the shell. Their one form of protection, and Caracosta no-sells it. That is a real menace. Thankfully, Caracosta in mass numbers were wiped out. Otherwise, they would have been a big problem in this universe. I don't care how delicious Omastar is. That entire shell's gotta be like eating a crate of smashed Heineken bottles, chewing on a jagged shell. Them giant fanged teeth it's got on him as well. Like, ooh, careful boys. That Omastar's got a bit of a kick to it. This may be the most documented example of prey. Shellder is like the modern day Omanyte, and it's a part of maybe the most famous example of predator prey in Pokemon. Shellder on the Slowpoke, even Cloyster, he can't get enough of that tail. The smarter way to go about it, really. Stay abstinent from Slowpoke tails until you evolve into a Cloyster. That's the smarter way to go about it. You stay abstinent from the Slowpoke tails until you evolve into a Cloyster, lest ye be forever trapped to the body of a Slowbro, like some kind of Greek mythology punishment for giving in to temptation. But that is also if you can live long enough as a Shellder. With this lineup of predators going for Shellder, you might just want to be biting into the Slowpoke tail the first moment you can, just to find yourself with the first transport opportunity that you find to leave that strain of the food chain. But if you're a Shellder, you've got to be looking twice for any Omastar, Bruxish, Kingler, even Rufflets are getting the best of them somehow. No matter where Shellder exists, sea, land, air, there's gonna be something about just waiting to crack into your shell and slurp up your tasty insides. And even then, if you do manage to evolve, you've still got Kingler there gunning for you as a Cloyster, just yearning to give you a little bit of the clamps. All it sees is a wham-sized Shellder. It has to use the strong hand, the big un, this time to crack open. Sadly, if one of these predators bites into a Shellder who happens to be biting onto a Slowpoke tail at the exact same time, it doesn't quite seem to make some kind of super evolution. On the topic of Rufflet, if he's not finding any Shelders about, a Spuper will more than satiate it enough for the time being. This one seems a lot more on brand. I feel as though a Shellder could take a Rufflet quite easily. Should have a solid ice move on it at least to keep the Rufflets a bit humble. A textbook transaction in nature here. Spinarak catching Cutiefly in his web commences the consumption. Nothing the fly can do about it. But you know who else is on that kind of diet? Pineco, being a predator to anything. Apparently so. Waits about in the trees, waiting for a Cutiefly to come along. If you find yourself being prey in that situation, that's kind of on you, brother. I mean, can Pineco even move? It makes its whole hunting method reliant on others not fully knowing if they can move. I mean, it falls Cutiefly at least. It's completely their fault. While I'm here, Appleton isn't against their little Cutiefly here and there, luring them in with its nectar scent. What a catfish. What a nonce sting that is. Going in expecting a nice little treat, but oh, yeah, of course, every time. It's a 30-pound worm again. Yeah, police are on their way and all that. Does the exact same for Combee and all. But that seems like the much more merciful predator to end up against is Appleton if you're a Combee. Because if not for him, you'd be getting your honeycomb split ganged up on by a much more violent predator horde of Salandit. Another example of this kind of predator-prey dynamic, that's assuming it's running dry on the Spinder supply there, because they're going for those, apparently. Oddly specific bit of prey work, although quite a smart bit of prey work. Yeah, just get the one with Vertigo. And it'd be a lot easier, you won't even see it coming. Lurantis also lures in Cricketop prey with a little scent as well, and then fills them in with its sickles. The sweet, alluring smell of flowers, only to get shanked. Gumshoos down Alola, specifically brought in as some kind of freelance hitman to control the Alolan and Rattata population. The problem there is, it's kind of a pulling by the root and an even stronger root growing out kind of situation. Yeah, the rats may be lower in number, but now you got Gumshoos everywhere. I'd be buzzing to be a Gumshoos though. Imagine being a Gumshoos and not only is your favorite meal everywhere, the government actively funds you to eat it. Take a Gumshoos to Sprout Tower or just any cave and its cheat meal is everywhere. Like walking into a cavern with lamb, Rogan, Josh, chicken, satay, skewers roaming about everywhere. And you know, while they're at it, Squove it, they can get it at all. Somehow, base form Rattata isn't a more documented meal. How common they are. You'd imagine everything under level 20 is eating the regional rats. But ironically enough, the evolved form of Johto's regional rat ferrets is one of the only ones documented by the Pokedex to be a canonical rat scranner. Although, that's just the Pokedex. New Pokemon Snap, you do have Meowth gunning for a Rattata, which makes sense. Classic cat and mouse. To which then, we can only assume Murkrow does the same. Another case where there's a feud going on between the Meowth over their food. It all adds up, doesn't it? How do you think Meowth managed to survive on the mean streets of Pokemon New York the same way everyone else does on the mean streets of New York? Eating rats. Now, there's always something bigger out there. Always a regional rodent ready to make a fine dining experience out of you. Ferret eats the Rattata, Mightyena eats the ferret. Debatable calling that one a regional rodent, but a regional root oneer at the minimum. And this is only the surface level of what Mightyena is eating as well. Realistically, it's a predator to anything small and meaty enough. In New Snap, Drifloon is seen sneaking off with a Joltik, and Drifblim can be seen carrying a Clamperl. Now, is it really fair to say Joltik and Clamperl are specifically prey to these two? In this case, I suppose, but I feel as though the pair of these two, they just absorb anything it's feeling. I can guarantee not a fussy eater when it comes to the life energy. Same outcome either way, whether it's a Clamperl or Regigigas, its belly is equally as full, draining Gary's town map shifting sister. All that's really known about Vullaby is that they pursue weak Pokemon like Hatenna, which is a very, very bad investment to be making. Not a feud you want to be kickstarting. You can't just hide behind Mandibuzz with the "my dad'll beat up your dad" against the Hattery. The stakes are much higher. No, it's more like you don't seem to understand. My dad will stab your dad. Then Mandibuzz, they're even more cruel predators in their older age. Imagine your choicest food being Cubone. Hey boys, get a load of this one. Another orphan. Crack open the Grey Goose for eating good tonight. Keeps a keen eye out for Pokemon in a weakened state. Yeah, what, do you mean mentally? Don't you think the kid's got enough on his plate as it is? You know, first his mum dies, now he's got to suffocate himself in repels at all times to deal with vultures. To be fair though, vultures mainly go for dead bodies. So I think this is a very solvable situation. You can just, you know, decide to not be a complete melt. He's got his mum's skull worn at all times. Yeah, cheers. Nice one. Thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the trauma dump. Only had to look at you to feel emotionally exhausted. It's not Mandibuzz's fault their predator instincts kick in. They think you're dead. You are equipped with a carcass. Cubone, you're in the wrong here. Either way, Mandibuzz only serve to get filled in by the Marowaks that are still living, because the Cubone grow up to then become the predators to the Mandibuzz, clipping them from all the way up in the sky somehow. They got a pair of anti-UAV bones, apparently. The predator-prey chain just loops back into itself. The cycle of abuse just continues. Marowaks prey the Mandibuzz, Mandibuzz prey the Cubone. It's all the Cubone species' fault anyway. Like, that's probably why they feel the need to prey on the Cubones. I'd be cutting the legs straight out from under them as well if I knew that once they grow up, I'd be getting haunted by ghosts who want to cave my head in with a femur. And also, without this blood feud going on, Marowak mothers would be somewhat less dead to end up leaving the grieving and vengeful Cubones that then grow up to prey on Mandibuzz later on. This is just hassle, and it called for a ceasefire. Have a day off, the pair of yous. Remoraid spends his time sniping Burmy off the trees. I'd like to think he's a bit self-aware that he's arguably on the same food chain tier as the Magikarps and Wishiwashis, so he's resorted to outsourcing onto the land-based food chain, negotiating with the predators it probably should have underwater. Like, oh boys, don't be hasty here. Whoa, I'm a lot more useful to you lot alive. Okay, I got links to the outside world up there. I can export a bit of contraband. I'll do plant Burmy, sand Burmy, trash Burmy, the occasional Pineco, maybe a bug catcher or two if we get a nice bit of sun for the day. When Remoraid grows up and somehow metamorphosizes into an octopus, it somehow is finding itself as potentially prey to Seviper. Also seen in the new Snap lurking about, looking to try a bit of octopus. Now this is one I just can't suspend my disbelief for very much. If I'm a Seviper, I'm not chancing it. I'm not taking the chance kicking off with an Octillery. He'd probably do me in. I think I'd end up being slung into a big wok, because odds are the Octillery would fill me in. 2 moves max. Again, in the new snap, you can see a Silicobra going for a little bite on a Vivillon. I have to say, I've got to respect it. A very modest bit of prey work for a snake, going for just a butterfly. Nowhere near as evil as it could be. Like, he could be eating your nan, but nah, he's just off in the garden, snapping at all the fairies and that. Lycanroc being the sworn enemy of dealing, apparently. This one seemed a little bit random to me at first, but that's only because I had to collect myself for a second to even remember dealing was real, especially in their green fur. Who is this guy? But if you've ever seen how money on the table, gamer pool kinda locked in a dog will get once they notice a deer, then you know this one's a very basic predator-prey dynamic by Pokemon standards. Heatmor and his long since documented blood feud with Durant. Another very one-sided affair. I've gone into this one a fair bit before. I probably won't articulate it anywhere near as well, but you know what the deal is. A metal ant, only to be introduced to a fire-breathing ant eater, is taking a piss a bit. RC is not even trying to pretend here. Didn't have these ones play-tested before releasing to the public. Could have at least given the Durants access to a garden hose. They should already have it bad enough being prey like that. But then, they've also got Sandaconda going for their eggs. Hey, you just can't win being a Durant, can you? An anteater one side, egg eater the other. You're not safe pre and post birth. Afterlife's probably not a guaranteed safe haven and all, considering the guy who gave the go ahead on this insane power imbalance is sitting up there somewhere. Wattrel Arrokuda classic bit of prey work from the bird. It can have any small water type it wants, really. Electricity, bit of an evolutionary cheat code for a bird that eats exclusively fish. Nice little swoop, catch, little thunder shock, oh, instant grill, you're sorted. And then Cramorant shares this taste, as we all know, to the point of it being a battle mechanic. And in rare cases, if a Pikachu happens to be surfing nearby, or his balloons get burst over a nice bed of water, while not exactly its preferred or arguably even real form of prey like the Arrokuda, Cramorant, I don't think he's got a lot going on up there. He may just ignore that glaring 4 times electric weakness it's got going on, and he might as well just have a crack at downing an entire Pikachu. Sunkern being prey. Now, you don't exactly have to be stood idly at the back of a big lab for 50 years to be coming to that conclusion. Whether or not this Pokemon is your prey is entirely dealer's choice. There's not a single thing it could do about it. The power imbalance on display here. I'd imagine eating a Sunkern to be about as much of a struggle as trying to get head from the Alice in Wonderland doorknob. If your natural predator is a Spearow, then you likely have the defensive capabilities of a patch of grass anyway, so you may as well be on the lowest rung of the pecking order. Pidgeotto, another confirmed Scranner of Egg. Of course he is. Execute, such an easy target for a bit of sustenance. He doesn't even have to swoop in and grab the whole lot of them. He could just nick the one at the back and none of them would even notice. And a very minor but very obvious one. It's known that Pidgeotto do things the classic way with its insect eating. In one of the early episodes of the anime, Ashley gets a little stern warning that the giant bird he is currently in combat with may just try to eat his caterpillar. Of course, Misty would have to warn him about that one. You just gotta bring back the schools. 10 years, far too early to be sending him on the Pokemon journey. He knows nothing. He probably doesn't even know World War II happened. Okay, let's just go ahead and finally get the Buzzwole one out of the way. We know he drinks Snorlax, probably drinks everything, really. He'd find a way to make a tequila sunrise out of a Porygon. Actually, yeah, I know, obviously Porygon, he's digital. Yeah, he couldn't do that. He's got to deal with far worse predators. Look, I don't know what the exact prey for it would be here. All I know is that Buzzwole is 1000% a predator. And then Guzzlord, I think it's only fair to chuck him on there as well. There's probably a few others that I should by default involve here that I'm forgetting. I know, mate, I know, specifically canon documented prey, but I mean, if he's eating entire mountains, it's quite hard to ignore. I feel like the comments will never pipe down at me if I don't at least mention Guzzlord. Exact same thing for Swalot. I've used that Vor trading card of him in videos far too much to not at least mention it here, but you know, no specific prey that I'm aware of. And then on the topic of Buzzwole, Snorlax is far and away from having a clean conscience. Plenty of blood on his hands and especially his mouth. Anything and everything are consumed by him. We all know that. Pokemon or not. So you can go ahead and chuck him on the list and all. I guess it's just fresh on my mind because I found a clip of him lurking up behind the Gloom last video in the anime. Do you know how dirty Gloom are meant to smell? Yeah, if he's eating Gloom, he's eating the whole menu the Pokedex has to offer, no question.